We welcome you to Muncie United Methodist Church for this service of Tenebrae, or shadows. Tonight we hear the story of Jesus' passion and death from the Gospel according to Mark. We sing the hymns, extinguish candles, and in the increasing darkness, feel the feelings of the day Christ died. We are reminded that in the cross, God meets us in our suffering. From today forward, we know that there is nowhere we can go where God is not with us. God is here. Let us worship together.
It was on the Friday that they ended it all. Of course, they didn't do it one by one. They weren't brave enough. All the stones at one time, or no stones thrown at all.
They did it in crowds where you can feel safe and lose yourself and shout things you would never shout on your own and do things you would never do if you felt the camera was watching you.
It was a crowd in the church that did it. It was a crowd in the civil service that did it, and a crowd in the street that did it, and a crowd on the hill that did it.
And he said nothing. He took the insults, the bruises, the spit on the face, the whips on the back, the curses in the ears. He took the sight of his friends turning away, running away.
He let them do their worst until their worst was done. As on a Friday, they ended it all and would have finished themselves had he not cried out, "Father, forgive them," and began the revolution.
Survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died. My richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. Forbid it, Lord, that I should boast, save in the death of Christ my God. All the vain things that charm me most, I sacrifice them to his blood. See from his head, his hands, his feet, sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did such love and sorrow meet, or thorns compose so rich a crown? Were the whole realm of nature mine,
sung a hymn, they left the city for the Mount of Olives. As they walked, Jesus said to his disciples, "You will all desert me this very night. So it is written in the prophet Zechariah, 'Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered.'" Then Peter protested, "Though all desert, I will remain by you." Jesus replied, "I tell you truly that in this very night, before the cock crows twice, you shall deny me 3 times." Still, Peter maintained, "Even though I must die with you, I will never deny you." And so declared all the disciples.
Jesus halted at an olive grove called Gethsemane. Then going apart with Peter, James, and John, he left them on watch and continued a little farther alone. There he fell on his face in anguished prayer. Soon he returned to the 3 on watch and found them sleeping. Rousing them, he asked Peter, "Could you not watch with me for just 1 hour? Watch and pray that you are not put to the test, for the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again Jesus went apart in troubled prayer, and again he returned to find the disciples sleeping. Then Jesus said, "Sleep on and finish your rest. Now is the time for the Son of Man to be delivered into the hands of sinners. Here comes my betrayer."
Jesus had not finished speaking before Judas, one of his own disciples, arrived with a group of Roman soldiers and other armed men from the temple. Now, the betrayer had arranged with the authorities for a sign, and he said, "The man whom I kiss is the one you want." In accord with this arrangement, Judas went directly to Jesus and cried out, "Greetings, Master," then gave him the kiss. Jesus responded, "Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" Immediately the soldiers laid hands on Jesus and held him fast. Then one of the disciples with Jesus drew his sword and cut off an ear from the slave of the high priest. But Jesus said to him, "Sheathe your sword. All who take up the sword will perish by the sword. Do you not know that I can call upon my Father, and that he will respond at once with more than 12 legions of angels?" Then, turning to the mob, Jesus continued, "Have you come for me against a rebel bandit with swords and clubs? Why did you not seize me in the temple where I sat teaching by day? Were you so afraid of the Jewish people that you must come for me by stealth? Nevertheless, your actions are fulfilling the words of the prophet." Then all of his disciples forsook him and fled.
Your only Son, no sin to hide, but you have sent him from your side to walk upon this guilty sod and to become the Lamb of God. Your gift of love they crucified, they laughed and scorned him as he died. The humble King they named a fraud and sacrificed the Lamb of God. O Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Oh, wash me in his precious blood, my Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. I was so lost I should have died, but you have brought me to your side, to be led by your staff and rod, and to be called the Lamb of God. O Lamb of God, sweet Lamb of God, I love the holy Lamb of God. Oh, wash me in his precious blood, by Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God. Oh,
Those who had seized Jesus brought him to Caiaphas, whom the Romans had made a high priest. Peter followed at a distance as far as the courtyard. There he sat with the attendants and warmed himself by the fire. The high priest had gathered his whole council, and they began to arrange the case against Jesus, which they would present to Pontius Pilate, the governor. The charge was that Jesus claimed to be the King of the Jews, and they brought in many false witnesses to no avail. Finally, 2 came forward and testified. "We heard this man say, 'I will tear down this temple made with hands, and within 3 days build another not made of hands.'" The testimony was evidence that Jesus claimed an authority over temple affairs, which traditionally belonged only to the rulers of Israel, and in those days Israel was ruled by Rome. Yet even these witnesses were unable to agree on their testimony. Finally, Caiaphas stood up and examined Jesus directly. "Have you no answer to these charges?" demanded the high priest. Jesus remained silent and answered nothing. Then the high priest put the question of kingship in terms of the royal titles Anointed and Son of God. "Are you the Anointed One, the Son of the Blessed?" he probed. Jesus answered, "I am, and you shall see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming in the clouds of heaven." The high priest turned and said, "What need have we of witnesses? He has condemned himself." They all concurred that Jesus was indeed worthy of death. Then those holding Jesus began to spit on him. They covered his face and were striking him as they taunted him and said, "O Anointed One, prophesy who it is who is striking you."
Now Peter was warming himself in the courtyard when a small slave girl entered and said to him, "You were also with Jesus, the Nazarene." Peter quickly gave a denial. "I do not know what you are talking about," he replied, and went outside into the gateway. Meanwhile, the cock crowed. The slave girl followed Peter out and said to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." Again, Peter denied knowing Jesus. After a little while, the bystanders said directly to Peter, "Surely you are one of them, for you speak with a Galilean accent." Then Peter began to swear an oath. "I do not know this person of whom you are speaking." But the cock interrupted him and crowed for the second time. Immediately, Peter remembered how Jesus said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. He went out and wept bitterly.
When morning arrived, all the chief priests, along with the other Roman collaborators, bound Jesus and delivered him over to the Pontius Pilate, the imperial Roman governor. When Judas saw what was happening, he knew that Jesus was doomed, and he repented. He returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and confessed, "I have sinned in betraying the innocent blood." "What is this to us?" they responded. "That is your affair." Judas threw down the 30 pieces of silver in the temple. Then he went out and hanged himself. Picking up the silver pieces, the chief priest said, It is unlawful to put this silver in the treasury, for it is blood money." Whereupon they used the money to buy the potter's field for the burial of strangers. Therefore, that field is known to this day as the field of blood.
Jesus stood before the Roman governor as the accusers made their charge. "We found this man perverting our nation," they said. "He was forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor and proclaiming himself anointed king." The governor asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "You say so." The chief priests were accusing him of many things. Therefore, Pilate again spoke to Jesus. "Have you no answer to give?" he asked. "Look at how many accusations they are making." Jesus astonished Pilate by remaining silent.
At the festival, the governor used to release a prisoner, and some were urging Pilate to do so at this time. Now there was a notable rebel in prison with those who had committed murder during the insurrection. His name was Jesus Barabbas. Therefore, the chief priests arranged a demonstration to demand Barabbas. Pilate asked them, "Whom do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus the Anointed One?" The crowd shouted, "Crucify him!" Pilate continued, "Are you certain of his guilt?" The crowd took up the chant, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Again Pilate spoke, "Shall I crucify your king?" "We have no king but Caesar!" cried the demonstrators. Then Pilate agreed to release Jesus Barabbas. But Jesus, the Anointed One, he handed over to the soldiers for scourging and crucifixion.
The soldiers led Jesus away within the governor's palace. They assembled the whole battalion. They clothed Jesus in royal purple. They set a crown of thorns upon his head and shoved a reed between his fingers for a scepter. They began to mock him by kneeling before him and proclaiming, "Hail the King of the Jews!" They also spat upon him and smote him on the head with a stick. Then, after mocking him, they took the purple away, returned his own clothes, and brought him out to crucify him.
On the road, they met an African of Cyrene named Simon coming in from the countryside. Him they compelled to carry the cross. They brought Jesus to a place called Golgotha, which means skull. There they crucified him. They offered him wine mingled with myrrh, but he refused it. His garments they divided among themselves, casting lots for them. Over his head they inscribed the charge against him, "The King of the Jews." Also there were 2 insurrectionists crucified with him, one on his right and one to his left. Those who passed by were shaking their heads in derision, saying, "So you would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days? Save yourself. Come down from the cross." Likewise, the priestly collaborators mocked him as they said to one another, "He saved others. Himself he cannot save. Let the Anointed One, the King of Israel, come down from the cross, that we may see and believe." Even the 2 crucified with him reviled him.
Now from midday there was darkness over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At that hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," words that mean, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Some of the bystanders said, "Look, he's calling for Elijah." One of them put a sponge full of vinegar on a stick and laid it to his lips. Others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." Then Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last breath. Suddenly the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. Even the tombs of the dead were opened. Now when the centurion on watch and the others who were with him saw all that was taking place, they were filled with awe and said, "This man truly was God's royal Son."
Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that made us whole, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken by the transgression of my people? And they made his grave with the wicked, and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble.